Hi guys, welcome back and welcome to the Selenium with Java session that we have been talking about. And we are also talking about the core Java all these days. And we are going to continue the core Java this time as well. And today we are going to talk about working with arrays, a non-primitive type that we were discussing in our last video for string. And we are going to talk about arrays in this particular lecture. So we'll see how it goes. So if you remember in our last video, while we were trying to work with a string with what is called as a split operation, we saw that we actually got a return type of this split method as a string array. So there was something like array that we tried using it even on last video. And we also saw that we tried accessing the string using this square braces or square bracket to access the value out of it from the 0th index and things of that nature. So basically, if I just open a paint, I can quickly show you over here. So basically, if there is an array, the arrays in programming language are usually defined something like this. As I can just draw, not a very great diagram though, but I'm trying to make it happen. So if you see, like, this is how the array looks like in programming world, where you can try storing any of the values on these boxes, but all these value should be either an primitive type or an object. So for instance, if you're going to be storing a primitive type, let's say an integer value, which is going to be let's say 12 for that matter. Let me just increase the length of this. Yeah, not that big. There we go. So if I'm going to storing the value of 12 here, then you can't store k in the next value of the array. So that's not how it actually works. If you have started using the array with an integer type, then you always need to make sure that the array stores the same data type, which means once you store a value of integer on that array, then the array become an int array. So you can't store an string on that array. So now it becomes like this. So you can store 13 or 14 or 15, something like that. You can't even store a 15.01, which is a double data type. You can't store that. That's not going to work as well. You can only store 15 for that matter. So that's how the array is going to be. And the way you access this array are using their indexes. So we call this as index in array. So this is the 0th index. And this is the first index. This is the second index. This is the third index. And this is the 4th index. So tomorrow, if somebody's going to say, hey, Karthik, what is the third index of this array? What is the value of the third index of this array? Which means we are referring to this guy over here. So it's going to be 15. So if I'm going to say I wanted to get the value of the 0th index, then it's going to be always the first value of an array, which is this guy. So this is how an array is going to look like and work most of the time. Similarly, as I told you, you can have an array with an string type if you wanted to. So you can have like this over here. Drawing is not great, but just bear with me. And I'm going to say here as Karthik, for example. And I can have Prashant here. And I can have Raja here. And then I can have Bob here. So I can put all these string type on this particular array, but I can't store 1 in here. I mean, you can put the 1 in double quotes if you wanted to. It becomes a string, but you can't have like an integer value on that. So this array now we call as int array. And this array we call as string array because it only stores string value. And the way we define this integer array in Java programming language, we can do it in 3 different ways. One is you can either use int with a square bracket like that, which means it's an array. and then you put double quotes, and then you put all the values in the double quotes, in the braces like that. Or you can also do int array is equal to new of int, and then you can put the value, and then you can also put a specific size of the integer as well. So we will see how you can do all these things in Java over here. So I'm gonna just close this. So hopefully you got the idea how the arrays are gonna look like. So basically, array is gonna store a collection of data into it, and the value can be a primitive type or an object, but it should always be of same type. You cannot mix and match multiple different types on an array. And that's what array is. And you access the array value from an index, and that's how you do it. The arrays are always a 0th index. So it always starts from 0. It does not start from 1, right? Hope you got the idea. So I'm going to close this over here, and I'm going to come back to this same code that we have been working before. I'm going to delete this line because we don't really need that. You already are familiar with the string. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to start working with arrays. So I'm going to say int array, right? So in order to define the int array, as I told you, you can just do int, and I just open two square brackets, something like this. And then you need to give the name of the variable. And the name of the variable is going to be, let's say, my array. And this is how you define the variable, you know that. And then you put is equal to there. And if you just open a braces, and then if you type 20, 30, 40, 50, and close the braces and put a semicolon. Now this is an integer array. So this my array is now basically an integer array for you. And in order to access the value, you know how to do that, right? Like system.out.print, and just put the value my array. And now when we try to run this my array, you will notice that the my array will not be printing all these value for you. So if you don't believe me, if I try to run this code over here, you see that I'm going to get like an object. Remember the exact same thing happened while we tried doing the split operation of our last video. While we were doing the string of split, we got an object, something like this. That's exactly what is happening even in here. We are seeing an object which is of an array type. That's what is this value. So now if I want to print a value, which is like the 0th index of an array. So this, consider this as like a box. Now, if I want to print the 0th value of it, you know how to do it, right? Like the square braces, like how we did before in our last video while we were using the split operation, and put a 0 there. That's all. Now, you know what is the answer. The 0th index is going to be 12, right? So if I just run this, you see that we are getting the 12 value out of it. And if I put, say 1, the value is going to be 30, right? So you got it right. So this is how you define an array of an integer in Java. And what if you wanted to do in a different way? Let's say if I want to declare the integer in a different way, what is that, Karthik? So let's say you have got a scenario where you always know that the array value is going to be of this length, because now this is like an indefinite length. I mean, right now it is this length of the array is 4. But if I wanted to get the length of the array, or restrict the length of the array to 5, how can I do it? Well, the way you can do it is, let's say restricted array, which is equal to, you can just say new of restricted, new of int with, I'm going to say 5, something like that. And to initialize the value for this array, you actually need to do this restricted array, and then put the 0th index like that is equal to, let's say 10. See, this is how you set the value right now. And you can do the exact same thing for the rest of them as well if you wanted to. So let's say 1 is going to be 20, and 2 is equal to 50, and 3 is equal to 70, and 4 is equal to 100. And if I put 5 over here as 1000, and if I put 6, something like that. And now if I try to run this code, you will notice that the code is not going to work basically, because you see that I have declared the value, that the length as 5. So if I try to if I just try to add more than 5, let's say if I want to access this value, restricted array, or even if I don't even do that, so let's say I'm just going to comment this line of code. And if I try to run this code here, do you see that I'm going to get an exception here? It says that index 5 out of bound exception because the length is totally of 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the length in total. So you can't assign more than that. So if I just delete this line of code completely like that, and now if I try to run this code, you will see that there is no exception. The reason why I just wanted to show you is that even if I try to assign a value beyond the index, which has been, the size which has been set, you're going to get an exception. That's what is the whole idea of this particular, the length that you can do. But if you don't specify any length, you can assign the value of any size. That's how it actually works. So this is how you do it in the array over here. That is something you already know now. Okay. And the last way you can also do it is, so let's say if I wanted to do an array for an integer, you can also say new of int array, something like that. So instead of you just putting like a braces, you can also just specify the type as integer type over here. And instead of you using an integer array like that over here, you can use something called as a var keyword. So var is an implicitly typed variable in Java. We have not discussed about var yet, but var is another way that you can tell, and the compiler which Java has got knows automatically that this var can be of any type based on the return type of that type that you are assigning to that variable. So this variable right now knows that this is an integer array. So if you just hover through that variable over there, you see that it says occurrence of int array. So the IDE knows that this var type is basically an integer array type. So that's what this thing is actually telling you over here. So you can use a var keyword as well to define what type it is. So now the var is something new. You have not seen it before, but I think it's going to be it's a good time for you to understand that you can use another keyword in Java called var to specify what it is. So if you don't specify this int array over here like that, you see that it is going to throw you an error. It says the array initializer needs an explicit target type. So you need to explicitly specify that it's an int array type if you're using var there. If you don't use var, let's say if you just use an integer array like that, you don't really necessarily have to mention this guy. It's just going to work for you. That is how you can define array in another way as well. And most of the code, that modern codes that people are writing at this time, they actually use var type most of the time, and they use the syntax as new of integer array, something like that. So this is how they mostly define, and the code is just going to work fine as expected, like before. So that is about the integer array in Java. You can also do something like a multiple arrays like this. See that there is a 2 square braces over here, and you can also just open a braces like that. And then because there are two dimension of arrays, then you actually need to put 2 square braces and put different values altogether. So it's like 99, or maybe 29 and 39 and 49 and 59. So just equivalent to that value there, maybe 19, right? So if you do that, you see that it's 12, it's 19, 30, it's 39, 40, it's 49, 50, it's 59. That's how the values have been defined. And now if I want to access the array with 1 of 1, so let's say how it looks like. You see that it is going to be printing you the 39 over here, because you're just gonna get the 1 of 1 over here. That's why you're getting that. So this is the multi-dimension indexes. I mean, most of the time you'll not be using multi-dimension arrays in automation testing. That's what I have seen so far. But you'll be end up using collection frameworks like an array list or dictionary, something like that. But yeah, just keep in mind that we also have something called as multi-dimension array in Java. That's about the int array for you. The next one is going to be the string array, which I wanted to make it very faster. You already know about the integer array, so you also know about the string array in that case. So in order to define the string array, all you have to do it is you just have to put like a string and same 2 square braces and give the name of the variable as names or whatever. And then just open the braces over here and let's say Karthik and then Prashant and then Bob, something like that. So that's how you define the array over here. And in order to access the value, let's say I'm just going to copy this and paste it over here. And I'm going to say names of 0. Just think what is names of 0 means in here. You got it. It is Karthik. So it's going to be printing Karthik for you. Let me just make it like print ln so that it prints the next line. And if I run it, oopsie, let's make this as ln as well. And you see that we get Karthik over here. And if I print the value as 2, then it is going to be Bob. So that's how it actually works for us over here in the string array. And you know the other shorthand way of defining the exact same thing, which is going to be instead of the string of true square brackets, you can just say var type, and you can just specify new of string array, something like that. And this is like a names with var. And now you can also access the exact same thing like how we did before. You're going to get the Bob for this as well. That's how you do the string array. And with that example in place, now I can also tell you that you can get the length of the array using the length method. So because this is an array which is a non-primitive type, you remember we can put a dot and it's going to bring you multiple methods for string. Similarly, even in the array, it's a non-primitive type. You also get quite a lot of different methods this time, as you can see over here. Do you see that? We have so many methods this time as well. Pretty much like string, but it also has got few more methods specific to array. And because this is a string array, there are some methods very specific to this string array. But if it's an integer array, you won't find those methods for the integer array. You see that? I don't get quite a lot of methods this time for the integer array because you know that integer is a primitive type. And if I try to do the exact same thing with a string, I actually get quite a lot of method because it is a non-primitive type and it has got so many methods in it, right? So let's say if I want to make the names as uppercase, then I can just say to uppercase. Remember that's exact same thing that we did before in our string, because this value which has been returned from this array is a string type and the IDE already knows very intelligently that this is a string. Now it is going to make this as Bob as uppercase there. And not only that, as I told you, you can also get the length of the array. So if I want to get the length of the array, then I can just say, okay, the names var without having any indexes. And if I hit dot there, you see that we have got something called as length. With this length, now if I try to run this, it's going to give me the length as 3 because it knows that the length of this particular array is 0, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be totally of 3 length, right? So that's about the length for you. So this is how we can actually work with an array in Java for both integer and for string. So hope you got the idea of how you work with the arrays. I've not spoken about how you iterate through the arrays using for loop or while loop, because we have not spoken about the looping yet. So I'm just going to hold my breath tight for you to teach this looping concept and how you loop all the values and print them all together using the for loop or for each loop. Those things we'll do once we get to the looping statement. But at least for now, you already got the idea of how to work with array. Catch you in our next video where we are going to be talking about classes, one more non-primitive type.